Just act. If you worry, it kills all your creativity.
Design the business that you want, and then get clear on where does the art live.
Transform those investments into the better sous chef or the better assistant GM or the better salesperson, right? That typically whoever is the driver is the decision maker, which creates a natural conflict and division of power.
We cracked the six-figure mark, which was, at 24 years old was something I was pretty excited about for the first time.
Read 10 pages a day.
I'd be really curious where we'd be at now, or how long it would have taken to get to this point if I pulled that decision back in 2008. The other piece of advice that my mentor gave me, he said, you got to go take 100,000 photos this year.
And when you decide to do that, then you're missing the fourth horseman, which is how do you go into a company, land the job, you're like, all right, I want to be business development, and we're going to help get you from X to 25 million. What's that look like?
If I can actually show up in the space, be generous with my time, go out there and engage, it was always reciprocated back. And that took us kind of from 0 to like 3-4 million a year, just doing that.
What would you do today different to double or triple that number?
Easy to do the first year, hard to do the second year. And it had to do with the fact that we'd found a business model where we had leverage, which was a lot of fun.
All right, we're here at My Ghosted Guest. We have a premise for a show. The important thing that I think we're trying to portray to our listeners and our friends and our followers and our family is that engagement stands out as one of the most important things that we can put a focus on right now in today's culture, like what we want to call this like new series of like social media and AI. And I call it the AI tsunami that's coming at us from so many different directions. We don't know how to approach it, but we're just here to really talk about how engagement can work in your everyday life, what it feels like, how to be better trained on it, how to train your teams better. So really some of the investments we're already making, let's transform those investments into the better sous chef or the better assistant GM or the better salesperson, right? And we can do that here. But I think most everybody in the crowd wants to know, who is Gabe Ryan? Where is he from? Why does he deserve to talk here? What do we have to help everyone else? Like if we were to squeeze you down into the best, breakfast juice filled with
I've been squeezed.
Superpowers and nutrients of the Gabriel Ryan show. Like, what do we got? So I think today I just want to dive in and just learn more about you and kind of pull at some of the strings in your history and, give our readers an idea of why and who is Gabriel Ryan. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, I'm totally down. And I think with the theme of this show, and I'll touch on some of the things that you shared, this is less about me and what I've done, but my hope is that, those of you that are watching and listening, you're on your own journey, and we want to hear from you and kind of where you're at. And there's probably parts of my story that maybe you see in yourself, because when it comes to engagement, it's really interesting. And I've been in the exact same spot before where I've wanted followers, but I haven't been leading. It's hard to have followers if you don't lead. I've wanted engagement, but I haven't been engaging. And so, yeah, excited to kind of dive in and share a little bit about where I've been. I tell my kids all the time, I said, especially after a long sports weekend, we had soccer games and baseball games and all the things. And after a game or a tournament, I always tell my kids, I was like, hey, sometimes we win, sometimes we learn. We don't lose, we win or we learn. And I always ask them, what did we learn? So there definitely are a lot of things. I've had a lot of learning over the years. Definitely have stacked some wins as well, and happy to share what those look like. So let's do it.
I like that word. I like the word learning, right? I mean, that makes a lot of sense. So let's dive in there for a little bit. All right, 2006 to 2016, photography business. Let's set the stage. You're with your wife. Were you guys married at that point, or were you guys dating, or was this you guys were already connected?
When Carly entered my world, she entered my world like like the greatest hurricane imaginable. I had all of these preconceptions in my mind about what relationship would look like, and I had all these rules of, okay, I'm gonna meet someone, we're gonna date at least a couple years, be engaged at least a year, you name it, right? And October 06, met Carly, engaged by February 07, married in July. And so met, married, and started a business like overnight, which was not the original plan, and I wouldn't change it for anything.
The express route with Gabriel Ryan.
Yes.
Right here on My Ghosted Guest. All right.
We fast tracked it.
That's amazing. I feel like we were on a fast track as well. But all right, so photography, like,
Yep.
you have to set the frame. Like, we have a little bit of connection here in the photography world. Like, you know, if I look back into our Flickr galleries and things that I feel that we've done well or started to help other people see a new way of doing it. But I mean, we've got hundreds of thousands of photos and like shot list of what we've done over the last few years, right?
Yep.
You guys created a business around that. So explain to me, like, what would you say to a photographer? Let me paint an avatar out there, right? One of our friends.
Yep.
He is extremely talented. Like, you want someone to shoot your wedding? The only person we were going to have shoot our wedding was this guy, right?
Yeah.
And we had worked with him, and his approach to food and portraits, everything, super detailed. Anyways, he comes into our lives, and we've known each other for about 15 years now, and we've seen his career slide up the ladder, and he's got some really great clients and does some things, but he's at that point in his life where he's like, I've got kids and I'm working 6 to 7 days a week, sometimes 14 hours a day, and I'm not going the direction that I want to be. I want to enjoy what I do, not get burned out, and I want to enjoy my kids. So this sounds like a pain point for a lot of people, right? So based on that avatar and that individual, and you with your experience with your wife, Carly, what would you say to someone today like him and to yourself 20 years ago if you were to restart that business? You looked at, I made, $1 million in revenue across 10 years. What would you do today different to double or triple that number?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's great. It's a great question because, what do we say? Hindsight's 2020. There's a lot of things I wouldn't change, and am grateful for, things like understanding early on how important it was to treat the business itself and the relationships that I had in business, whether it was with other professionals, planners, bloggers, publications, you name it. And then obviously with clients too, and really treating the business as the art as much as the art itself. Because I remember jumping into the photography world, and it always had been an artist, and really saw photography as a way of getting paid to do art. And there was a very clear division in the community and in the industry, where you had the artists on one side and you had the business people and marketers on the other side. And it was kind of like, I'm one or the other.
Let me ask this. So, okay, what I'm seeing or I'm picturing here, you're painting an individual. I feel like I've been there, that your work is your art, your love. That's your detail. That's where you pour your passion. That's where you want to be different. But then you go home and your QuickBooks and your Excel sheets, that doesn't feel like art to you. So you kind of build a little resistance from making your business the art as well. And you're saying that sometimes people don't treat their business internally, the function, the form, the modeling, the sales, the marketing, as an art form. They treat what they think what they're getting paid for, and not seen as a whole business. Is that kind of what you're saying? Like,
100%. Yeah, and I think what the best artists do, the best artists can like create a picture in their mind, and then they can go create that thing. I haven't met too many artists that haphazardly go about creating. that don't have a picture in their mind of what they want to create. And so if I was going back and starting over, what I would do differently, or I would double down on, is I would get really clear on the kind of business that I actually wanted, and what did that look like for me being able to create the art, me actually taking pictures and in post production, and how ultimately how I would deliver those photographs. What kind of medium and what that delivery process would look like. But equally so, how much time do I want to be working on the business? What is the kind of work I want to be doing? What's the kind of work I don't want to be doing? What are the relationships that I want to have and I want to cultivate, or that are required to build that kind of a business? And I would have doubled down even more on that, because there are some things, to whether it's your QuickBooks and your accounting, which it's like, okay, yeah, there's not really a place in your business for, like, you shouldn't be spending your time as the artist worrying about your chart of accounts. And I would agree that's probably the case, but is there a requirement, a checkbox that before you get going, you need to have that kind of system dialed in so you can move on to something else? And maybe the art that you realize you can dive into even more is that customer experience, or is the kind of peer relationships. I'll tell you, we grew tremendously from the relationships we made in the industry with other photographers, with planners, with people who were connected to our ideal client. So there's a PR company in Manhattan Beach, in the Redondo Beach area, called Be Inspired. And Layla at Be Inspired was an incredible connector for us. And I realized there were areas and opportunities where originally I saw it as more of a transactional thing, and it just didn't make sense, because I was like, no, I need to spend time with my clients, and I need to spend time putting my work out there and advertising myself. And then the more I got into it, I realized, like, oh, just being a good human, being connected with these other folks, that's going to ultimately lead to more business. And I'm not serving that relationship just to get more out of it. But if I can actually show up in the space, be generous with my time, go out there and engage, it was always reciprocated back. So design the business that you want, and then get clear on where does the art live outside of just you taking pictures, or you just, creating a menu, or making food, or, creating your next line of product, whatever it might be.
It's interesting you say that. There's something stuck in there that's getting me kind of locked up. It's, if you treat your books, for example, your chart of accounts, and you treat them like they're an art form, and then you hand it to an accountant, right? Because you have to pay an accountant or a CPA to do your numbers, unless you know how to do all that stuff, but most people don't. And that's not something we should be learning if we're a photographer or we're a website designer. Like, we should hire people and bill our clients, including those costs, fractionally for the entire year. Like, that's where billing gets down to an art form, where
100%.
Every job jacket that you have attached to revenue has a percentage in there for insurance, CPAs, accountants, and everything. And if the numbers don't work for the clients, your business isn't going to work for you, right? So
spot on.
If you have that chart of accounts and you get so nerdy and you make this thing so perfect and it matches up to QuickBooks or whatever software system you use to run your numbers, and you hand it to an accountant and they don't honor it, bye-bye. Like, just get rid of them. Like, we don't need that, because that means they would come over to your house, look at a photograph on the wall, you see something, they see something different, and you're not aligned on the same direction. So I think what you're saying to me is that it is really important to decide what your business is going to look like and what parts of those internal pieces can be an art form, and find people that honor them that will help your business grow, so you can work on growing your business and not having to work on the shit that you don't want to do, you know? And I don't know. So I feel like that. So, all right, here's a trick question. You get to pick a number between 3 and 5. So you can either pick 3, 4, or 5. What are you going to pick? What's your number, Gabe?
3.
Okay. So now you got a piece of paper. You're going to go through the quantum what do I call it? The time warp, the quantum time warp. And you get to go back. But the only problem with this time warp tunnel is that you get a pretty hardcore like set of amnesia that's going to last for about 6 months. So you got 3 things that you can write down on a piece of paper, and you're going back to your future self in 2006, and you're going to take 3 things with you from today. Yep. Write it down. What's on that piece of paper that's going to help you double or triple your revenue as a photographer at that point? What would the 3 things you could write down on paper?
Yeah, the first one is the entrepreneur builds the system and the system builds the business. That one's critical. One of my first mentors, he was actually the pastor that married my wife and I, and he was a photographer, had actually a really successful photography business, had a big following at the time as well too. And I looked up to him, and I remember sitting down at El Pollo Loco, because that's all I could afford at the time was a couple of bean rice cheese burritos. And I'm like, dang, like, what do I do? Like, do I need to be an LLC or an S Corp? And how do I market? How do I go get clients on all this? And he gave me 2 pieces of advice. And one of those was he gave me the book, The E-Myth Revisited. And the whole premise of that book is building a systems-based business. Because especially as service professionals, folks, and artists, we love our craft. We're working in our business, but if we're not working on it. So like, if I could just write down one of those things, that would be at the top of the list. The entrepreneur builds the system builds the business. I've seen that pay ROI over the last, I guess, 19 years, time and time again.
Number 2.
Second thing would probably be about, connection and engagement. It's the idea that conversions happen in conversations. And
so the more handshakes you make, the better your bank will relate, type thing.
I like that. Yeah. That's a great saying, great phrase. Yeah, 100%. Because I think when we're out there creating, it's the idea of, if you build it, they will come. We've all seen Field of Dreams. If not, great classic. But I think a lot of folks take that approach in business where, hey, I'm going to build this incredible product and just hope that people, show up. And certainly, especially once you get traction, product is like critically important. And I don't want people to mistake the fact that product is not important, because you absolutely need to get really good at what you do. The other piece of advice that my mentor gave me, he said, you got to go take 100,000 photos this year. And what he was telling me in that advice was saying, hey, like, you got to get really good at your craft. You got to get really good at what you're delivering, because once you start to pick up steam and you get some clients, that is going to ultimately create this, what I call the freedom flywheel, where, marketing generates all this attention for sales. Sales creates revenue for the business and clients and patrons. And then product spins back around and generates more attention back into marketing. I think it was Naval Ravikant said that, sales only has to work hard when marketing's not doing its job. And marketing only has to work hard when product isn't doing its job. So first thing would be that the entrepreneur builds the system builds the business. The second thing would be to really focus on conversation and engagement, and what that looks like with, how do I get into more conversations with my ideal customer, my ideal client, as well as my peers and the folks that are going to be connectors to that client for me. Who are the people that they're talking to before they talk to me and after they talk to me? So that'd probably be the second thing. The third, I'd probably just say, hey, go read Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. We both read that. I think like that, that has taken place. That book has almost taken the place of the E-Myth for me. And I think with those 3 bits of advice, focusing on building the system, going and leaning into conversation and seeking out conversation and engagement, and understanding how to leverage time would be all that I would need.
I love it. Great answers, man. I've just been toying with this, what are the 5 things that I wanted to know, 20 years ago? And if I could go through that warp tunnel with a little bit of amnesia, like, what would be the 5 things that I would take with me? That would change everything.
What are they for you?
One, I would probably put at the top is that just act. If you worry, it kills all your creativity. So just do it. Just go for it. No procrastination. And that would be one saying that I would want to learn. Two is dump everything into passive opportunities, passive income. That would give me a place to like understand what mailbox money looked like back then and how to build that and that career. And I wish I started that 20 years ago. It's always been in my brain, but I wish someone would have told me like with a little bit more gusto. And I think, like engagement, like I was so much into community building with events and I failed at the engagement part. And I wish I would have had an army of people who knew how to go out when we had 15 different social media channels running at a time.
Yeah.
And really just cultivate and talk to people. Our relationships would be tenfold at this point. I think the other one that's really important to remember is that I wish I would have billed my clients 10% extra every single time and take that extra 10 cents of every dollar and put it into coaches 20 years ago and make it a non-negotiable of business. Like build that line item in there and have my own coach and mentor piggy bank off of every single job jacket. That would have put me into light years different. And then I would have said, read 10 pages a day. And I think those are probably like some big ones, I think. But
the coach one is I want to double click on that because that was, again, you got to remember 2006, newly engaged, 2007, newly married. And I want to say, I think it was 08. I think we were like a year and a half in business. And I had read the E-Myth and we had some initial traction with the photo business. I was just like, hey, I'll go shoot whoever I can for like whatever they're going to pay, because I knew if we could start to like get word of mouth going, that was going to help. And I had read the E-Myth and discovered that they had a coaching program, a group coaching program, and it was a 12-month commitment. And the price, I look back, like the price now, it was next to nothing. I want to say it was maybe like $7-8 grand or whatever for the year. But at the time, like as newlyweds, we had like nothing in the bank account. We're just getting our start. It was one of the first biggest fights that my wife and I had, like as newlyweds. She's like, how, like, we don't have the money for this. Like, how are we going to do this? And I was like, trust me, I could try to figure all this out on my own, but these guys and gals literally wrote the book on it, and they've helped hundreds, if not thousands, of other businesses go through their process. I know we will get a return on this. And sure enough, in less than a year, we cracked the 6-figure mark, which was, at 24 years old, was something I was pretty excited about for the first time. That was a big deal, and we never looked back. And then from there forward, we got published in Real Simple's annual wedding magazine. They picked 10 events a year to put into their annual book. We got selected for that. We were published on, at the time, blogging was, still is, but blogs were ahead of social media and Instagram and even some of the print publications. So we were, and we were traveling the world, speaking, working with other photographers, shooting events from Moscow to Mexico to everywhere in between. And a lot of it goes back to being willing to like kind of go out on a limb, make that investment of, hey, I know we could go faster if we hired this coach. So I 100% agree with you on that. That was probably one of the better decisions that we made early on, that I'd be really curious where we'd be at now, or how long it would have taken to get to this point if I pulled that decision back in 2008.
Yeah, that's amazing. It makes me think of like most couples and those in relationships only use counselors as their coach. And that fraction is like, oh, it's $200 an hour. Oh, that's so expensive. $150 an hour, and
Yeah.
you go in, but when you're in a business relationship with your significant other, that typically whoever is the driver is the decision maker, which creates a natural conflict and division of power, which is really hard to overcome, which is eventually going to end up in some kind of counseling, unless there is that element of trust. And, that's a very unique place to go between. And when you guys found that kind of coaching resource, it opens you up to like see, because when we ran our businesses, it was just like my word was the last word, and I was the only one doing it, so I didn't think anyone could coach me any better on what I was doing. And it just basically takes 10 years until you know that you're absolutely wrong, because somebody is always better at it, whatever you're doing. And there's always models out there that you can either find, steal, or buy. And if you go and buy from the person who is the one who has done the best in the business and you can afford to be in that space, I think the return is always inevitable. So agree with that one. All right, so let's go to Strike Point. So you guys got out of photography and started to migrate, and you decided to go over and be like head of business development and growth strategy at Strike Point Media. So there you're helping them scale to $25 million in annual revenue. Explain to me how you do that. How do you go into a company, land the job, just, you're like, all right, I want to be business development, and we're going to help get you from X to 25 million. What's that look like?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is an exciting journey for sure. And this goes back to, what's the advice I would give myself, or I could go back in time, especially with the photography business. Would have been a little more clear on what's the kind of business that I wanted to create with the photography business, because I still had some questions, as I was turning 30. And I guess, it would have been a couple years in. So meet my buddy, Jeremy Blossom at church. And he was a financial advisor, wealth manager, who realized that he was actually a better marketer than he was a trader investor, but he loved finance. So he winds down the wealth management practice and spins up Strike Point Media, a digital marketing agency, to serve wealth advisors, trading companies, financial publications, those kind of companies. And at the time I was, still doing the photo thing, but really because I hadn't answered the question of like, what did I want my business, like, what would my business look like when it's done? And not done in the sense of like, oh, I'm done, but like, what is that art piece that I'm creating, like, that is my business? I loved the work that I did and the work that I produced and the clients that I worked with, but I didn't have a clear picture of what that would look like. And discovered digital marketing, which was this beautiful marriage of the creative and artistic side of things that I love, with writing and photography and filmmaking, and the sales side of things of, hey, can my words and pictures and videos actually sell something, like generate revenue for business? Like, we married those things together. I'm like, oh, that's digital marketing. That's amazing. So Jeremy's like, hey, we're starting this agency and I need some help on some of the creative projects. They need some motion graphics videos. I was like, hey, I can help with that. But I don't just want to like come in and just do some video projects. I'd be a lot more interested in shaping what Strike Point might become. And him and his business partner, Brian, were super open to that. They're like, yeah, absolutely. Like, hey, come in, do this. I mean, what risk did they have? They're like, come in, do this project. And if there's a path, I'm sure we'll find it and we can go down that path. So, I enter, I think it was like October 2014, and work on some of these projects and really get to understand this brand new business. It's like less than a year old, which essentially was, we're going to build websites and funnels for financial professionals. And that started as a great model because Jeremy knew a bunch of people in that space. We could build websites, we could build funnels, we could build courses and do these things. The problem was someone would pay us $30,000 for a custom course or learning management system, or $10,000 for a new website, you name it. And we would do all of this work, and then the work would be over and we'd have to go back and find new clients. Now we could scale that business because we could just go find more and bigger projects, but revenue was kind of like all over the place. So it started with, I said, hey, like, what if I went into business development? I love the strategy side of things of what we're doing and how it's actually helping a client get more leads, or how it's helping a client turn their existing ad spend into more revenue or more profit for the company. Let me go into business development and find other companies that we could help in the same way. So we started that. And then and that took us kind of from 0 to like 3-4 million a year, just doing that, just going and finding more of the right kinds of clients, selling them bigger projects and helping them solve bigger problems. But we were still capped because we were on this feast and famine cycle of getting projects and delivering on those projects. So we had to look at the business model itself, and the same clients that we were already doing websites for, we were doing funnels for, we were building out webinar funnels. Where were they spending their money every single month? And every single one of them was spending money on media. They wanted engagement. They were spending money on email lists, on radio ads. Facebook had just, opened up its platform for advertising. That was pretty early. Google had already been around. AdWords had been around for a while. And so we started to ask our quote self, how do we get a piece of that? Because they're spending that money every single month, not just 1 or 2 big projects a year. And so I helped launch an ad network inside of an agency. So we were a traditional agency where we said, hey, what if we owned some of our own assets, some of our own properties? So we spun up a website called investingshortcuts.com, another one, tradestocks.com, had a suite of about 12 different website properties. We would drive traffic to those websites. People would opt into those email lists to get tips and information and ebooks and all that kind of stuff. And then we started partnering with other list owners. There's a guy named Matt Paulson, owns a company called MarketBeat. I think he's got north of 6-7 million subscribers. The guy absolutely crushes. He's in South Dakota, is one of the legends in financial and email marketing. So we're working with guys like that. And then all of a sudden we had tapped into these clients needed traffic. They needed engagement every single month. So now we could rent them some space on our email list. And then very quickly, that media business overtook the agency side of the business. And that's the thing that took us really from like 3-4 million to 7, and then from 7 to 25 million a year. And we hit the Inc. 5,000 2 years in a row. It's really hard, easy to do the first year, hard to do the second year. And it had to do with the fact that we'd found a business model where we had leverage, which was a lot of fun.
And then what was some of the deciding factors of like, where are they now? Have they made the right choices? Are they still building, growing? Do they sell? Like,
Yeah. Strike Point's a super successful agency and a known factor in that industry. I ended up leaving in 2020. So timeline, I joined in 2014. We're growing the company. I decided to leave Southern California and Laguna Beach, which is a beautiful place. A lot of people are like, how in the heck would you leave Laguna Beach? But we left and we wanted to raise our kiddos somewhere else. So we ended up in Bend, Oregon, in Central Oregon, in the mountains at the base of Mount Bachelor, and loved it. So worked remote for a couple of years, and we got to that kind of 25 million mark. And I like to think that if I had stayed in Laguna, I really would have vied for partner and been like, hey, I like, give me a piece of this. I've helped grow it, because I was a W-2 employee, but had been it was really the only employee who was mistaken as an owner. So like we would go to these events. A lot of people in the industry thought that I was kind of partner, but I wasn't. So had moved to Bend. And as the company had grown, I realized we were at a point where the role that I was in, which was account services director, in charge of all of our account managers, business development, and growth strategy, meaning the person who, like, I would meet with each of our clients, like the Motley Fool or Agora Financial or Nerd Wallet, Morning Brew, you name it. I would be the ones meeting with them. and putting together the growth strategy of like, hey, here's the opportunity I see in your business and how we can help you with that. I realized that the company probably needed someone in-house because Strike One, even though this was early days of COVID, was building a much bigger office space, bringing everyone in-house, and was growing very rapidly and needed that in-person presence. And at the same time, I personally was thinking like, okay, well, I want to create something like this on my own. So I gave those guys notice. It was many conversations, and gave them like 6 months. We helped to kind of like backfill and make sure that they were good when I launched. So I since launched, but since then they've continued to do amazing things. My buddy Jeremy, who was the CEO, has now been able to step out of that role as CEO. Brian is still kind of running the show over there in house, and they're doing phenomenal.
So if you had the ability to go back in time and you look at that original contract, or just, let's say that Brady over here is going to go into a business development position, and I wanted to sink a clause into my contract, which is fair to both parties, that says if I do X, I get partner. What would something like that in a clause look like that you would suggest to people to consider trying to put if they're in a very similar position? What should they make the stretch for? Like, that's a good stretch goal, is to like, because if you can add your own clauses to agreement. When you get an employment agreement from anybody or a contractor agreement, it's not just a one-sided document. These are mutually beneficial for the growth and sake of both parties, right? And if they are written on a one-sided thing, then it's probably a shit agreement. So one, always have lawyers, but then what would you put in there? Like, what would you suggest to others to put into, like, you get into that position, what would you say?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Gabe, the prompt is, you are a master clause writer. What's the clause?
Yeah. So I think context matters big time with this question, because what I would do today is very different from what I would have done in 2014. In 2014, I did not have any leverage. I mean, I had my experience.
You just went through the warp funnel. You've got the warp funnel. You've got the warp funnel. You went through the warp funnel. You took it with you. So you can take whatever you
Well, because it's very different though, right? Like, because in like 2014, Gabe, I got paid, and I got paid really, really well to build that expertise. Now, if I had come in with that 6 years of experience and what I had already done before then, absolutely, I would put that clause in here of like, okay, hey, here's going to be my base. If we hit certain growth targets, then essentially, like, I'm going to get ghost equity and profit distribution. It's going to be something like that. But I think a lot of folks, what's that?
Wouldn't that be like the part of incentive that any business is going to say, yeah, I mean, if you get to that point, we all win. So yeah, like, let's give you some points.
That's what I'm saying. It's really easy to create those deals. And I get those offers all the time of like, hey, if you can help me grow your company, like, yeah, I'll give you a piece of it. But the reason I turn down 99.8% of those deals is because it's not balanced well. Like, the person, like right now, the folks that would come in and offer me that deal, there's no risk, there's no skin in the game on their part. They just want a growth marketer to like be able to come in and hammer revenue into their business without them kind of like having to put anything else into it. And back then, 2014, Gabe, with Strike Point, I could have made the deal, but there was no track record other than, I mean, I had almost 10 years of experience in my photography business and had those skills and my people skills and salesmanship, to go for me, but didn't have the actual track record and proof that I now have. So, it's those kind of like, and because you're married, and like me, we're also kind of married to your business partner. It's hard enough to have one relationship that's thriving really well, let alone multiple. And I personally kind of prefer, if I'm going to do something like that, like any kind of rev share type of thing, there's a philosophy that I have that says, if I can't see myself spending the next 10 years on this project. I'm not going to give it the next 10 minutes. And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to do work for someone or with someone, but certainly on a partnership level, I'm like, man, I got to be able to see, like, could I see myself going all in on this thing for the next 10 years? Now, if I had a crystal ball and I could go back 2014, Gabe, knowing what I know now and everything, and I could have sold them on that deal, I'd have been like, yeah, hey, once we hit, let's say, based on where we were at, hey, once we hit, 5 million, I'm going to get, whatever, 5% ghost equity and profit distribution. And then once we get to, let's say 10, maybe that goes to 10%. And if we get north of 20, that goes to 15%. But there were other, I mean, those percentages are just kind of like off the cuff because there were other investors and partners in that business as well. So, I mean, the math would have had to math out, but yeah, that's how I'd approach a deal like that. But again, I'm in those kinds of partnerships, I'm always looking for balance in the terms of, yeah, it's got to be a 1 + 1 = 10 kind of a deal. And most of the deals that I see are not set up that way.
It's an interesting approach, and I see it, and we have, like, this is, I think, some of the greatness of like why we come together and have different perspectives as much as so many people do. But
yeah,
how I see people leave things on the table, after being part of like a build of a brand, the selling of a brand, and the exiting of a franchise.
Yeah.
You start to look at like some of these elements that I see that happen in hospitality, especially around chefs and creators, right? What we're forgetting to do is put a value. What I kind of heard in your mind was, I didn't have the expertise yet. I didn't have my next 6 years of future game or my future expertise that I'm going to learn in this space in my pocket at that time. So I don't know how to stretch for it. But what we don't look at is what is our past expertise, right? I grew a business. I built it. I landed it on here. If I come to work for you, I'm giving up this growth angle that I have that I'm going to keep 100%. But I would like to come work for you. And we forget to leverage the opportunity cost of where we're coming from into where we're going, because they're not hiring or bringing people on because of the opportunity of like, unless you just need a mouth breather, then we just get that person on the floor. But if you need somebody who's going to build your company and you're going into that role, then I think you should always have the ability to say, where I'm coming from, I'm losing my opportunity. You guys are purchasing that opportunity. And in that purchase, I want to shape, if I'm going to be here, inspect that I'm going to be here for 10 years, that I have a juicy package. And here are the 3 most important things out of that package. If
100%.
we hit a crazy number, and put a crazy number up there. And I think that's something, that I think we're seeing more of it in today's environment. But, I see people get to those goals, and by nature of corporation and culture, people leave in an unknown state why they're leaving, but truly they're leaving because there was no end goal, right? It's like, come in, work for us, and we'll give you some bonus points until, you ask too much, and then everything gets awkward. And I think that's, the misnomer of not having clarity in clauses like that. But anyways, so thank you for sharing that. I think that's a good eye opener. And all right, so now you've built the Super Gabe. Now you've got some juice behind the game, and you meet somebody else named Jeremy. So did Jeremy morph?
Jeremy B, a different Jeremy B.
Is it like a transformation thing, like caterpillar?
And they could be more polar opposite too. I mean, they've definitely got some similarities, but they're very different. They're very different Jeremy B's.
So I think the anchor here is that what I'm doing and what you're doing is we're both on a mission to help 500 to 1,000 service-based industries succeed.
Yep.
And
100%.
then you saw GrowthMap as that opportunity. So walk us into GrowthMap, and we know the goal, but what is GrowthMap? Why GrowthMap?
Yeah, absolutely. So 2020, I go out on my own, start kind of freelancing and consulting for equity, working with a handful of clients. My family we end up moving out here to Nashville, Tennessee. And I knew, again, going back to the engagement piece and even the coaching piece, I knew because I was going to be putting myself somewhere new. So we had left Southern California, moved to Bend. There were some things we really loved about Bend, but there were some things that were missing because Bend is kind of on an island by itself. It's 3-4 hours from Portland is the next nearest city. And it's just a small town. And we kind of saw our future, again, always thinking with the end in mind. In the future, what are we going to want for our family with our kids? Like we saw it being much more realistic that we were going to be alone in Bend and our kids were going to be all over the place. So like, hey, can we go somewhere, one, where there's more commerce, there's more people, there's more stuff happening, and the chances of our kids kind of staying around close, and then just family values and all that kind of stuff. So we move out to Nashville, and super important to me when we moved out here, because I knew a couple of people that had made the move as well, but really didn't have connections out here. So I was like, I got to join a mastermind, or I got to get plugged in. How am I going to get plugged in? So, knew of a guy out here. His name's Taylor Welch, and he had a company at the time called Traffic and Funnels. I'd known about him because we'd actually sold leads to him through Strike Point. I was like, hey, let me jump into that mastermind. I think it was like $30K for the year. So I get plugged into this mastermind. In my first meetup event, who do I meet? I meet this guy, Jeremy B, who's my now business partner, and end up meeting a lot of really phenomenal entrepreneurs, folks from all over the world, but a big chunk of them were here in Nashville. So meet Jeremy. He's got an SEO agency doing websites and SEO for local businesses. Been doing that for 15 years. We had some kind of mutual connections, and right off the bat, if you know Jeremy, like he's got a million ideas and wants to partner. And I'm like, I wasn't quite ready for that yet. Was working and consulting with a handful of clients under the GrowthMap brand. And originally the GrowthMap brand, the idea was, I'm really fascinated with Mount Everest, and the idea that, especially those original climbers that first summited Everest, it was kind of like this massive feat, and still is to this day. But now, 700 to 1,000 people a year will summit Everest. People still die every single year. And the idea of that is that the dead bodies that are literally on the trail, because they can't bring them down off of the mountain, it's too dangerous. And so they just stay up there as these corpses that are a reminder that they also thought that just continuing to push harder was going to get them to their goal. And it wasn't, because they're still there on the mountain. So what makes the difference between someone who still achieves that feat and hits the summit? It's like, oh, well, usually they hire an adventure company and they have someone who's like mapped the route before. They have literal Sherpas that like walk the trail with them. They have a process where they just even getting to base camp is kind of a big deal. And they go from base camp to camp 1 and back, base camp to camp 1 and then camp 2 and back. And they have this whole process of getting acclimatized. So I started GrowthMap after leaving Strike Point, really with this idea of, hey, now I've worked in it was 242 businesses I had worked with to that point, ranging from 10K a month to one company was doing $2.5 billion a year. I'd seen a lot. I had provided insight and strategy. I had been that Sherpa. I had been that adventure guide. Could I give that map to other businesses? Could I work, one-on-one or in a group setting? So that's where GrowthMap was born. At the same time, I had moved to Nashville. I had met this guy, Jeremy. And then a couple of years later, after getting to know Jeremy more, he had a project that we ended up working on together. And that was April 23. Yeah. So like 2.5 years ago. We ended up working on that project together, and then that became the birth of, technically Blend Mode Ventures, which is now our partnership. I brought in the GrowthMap brand and are building it now to what it is today.
And what does GrowthMap do for me?
Yeah. So
What
mission and growth
problem are you
map. What's that?
what problem are you solving for me as an audience listener? Like,
Yeah,
what's my pain? What are you fixing?
absolutely. So the biggest problem again that I see with service-based businesses, much like it's played out in the book The E-Myth, we get into the business because we love the work that we do. We're really good at it. We get lots of good feedback. Hey, that was an incredible meal. That was an incredible experience. Wow, your product is amazing. Your photography is wonderful. You're a delight to work with. We get all those compliments. So we get into the business. We get stuck working in the business. And then we find ourselves working 6-7 days a week, nonstop, not enough pay. Why did we get into this in the first place? There's so many other kind of moving parts. So the problem that GrowthMap solves is that idea of actually helping you step out of that role as being like a slave in your business to stepping out to being the entrepreneur that works, that builds the system that then builds the business. So we call it your wealth machine. And the wealth machine really only has to do a few things. It has to do three things, because there's three main problems that I see with service businesses. One, they just don't have enough quality lead flow. So if you don't have enough attention, enough foot traffic, enough leads, enough patrons, enough potential buyers, you like it's just nothing's going to work. Doesn't matter how good your product is. If you can't market it and get attention, you're going to be in trouble. Then if you're just reliant on word of mouth alone and you don't have a predictable pipeline on the sales side, how do we actually turn that attention into revenue and cash? Also, again, dead in the water, because we want to help you build an acquisition system, and your acquisition system just has two jobs: to generate and capture attention and then convert that attention into revenue. So those two things, quality lead flow and then a predictable pipeline of customers and sales and revenue. And then the third piece, which often gets ignored, which I've been a fan of since the beginning, is that a lot of service-based business owners, they are overwhelmed with ideas and problems. They're constantly reacting to fires in the business. They've got a lot of things that they want to do and know that they want to do and they should do. But what we do is we replace that actually, and it's literally the name of the company, we replace it with a growth map. Like, you've got to have a predictable system, a blueprint for, hey, what are the activities I do every day in my business? How does that drive revenue in the business? What are the things that humans are going to do? What are the things that automation and the robots are going to do? What are the ways that media drives into that? So if we can help you get predictable quality lead flow, a predictable pipeline of sales, and then an actual blueprint for what does my system need to look like, and how do I know every single week, every single month, exactly what is the most important thing for me to be working on as the entrepreneur, then ultimately, like, you're going to have your wealth. That's what we call your wealth machine. You've got a wealth machine, and a wealth machine, really all it does is it gives you leverage on your time. So now all of a sudden you can work 2-3 days a week in your business and be hitting 7 figures instead of 7 days a week for not enough pay.
So with growth maps, I'm sure we have some restaurateur or someone in the hospitality industry listening today. All right, so I'm a great chef. I have a restaurant. It's doing well. It's not doing great. I'm still a little bit, looking and wondering where my people are going to come from. And some of the peaks and valleys don't really make a lot of sense to me because I don't know exactly why our peaks and valleys exist at certain times. But our Thursday night should be packed, but it's not.
Yep.
So I don't know, it's just kind of a generalization of, restaurateur land. So why is with lead flow important to me? Like, why is acquisition system, and, what do you guys do that can help someone like this?
Yeah. So in a restaurant, who are the people that put money into your business? Like, who pays you?
People who sit in your seats.
Yeah. Right. Your patrons, your customers, your clientele. And before they are sitting in your seats, giving you money for an experience, for product, you name it, there are some things that happen. And every single business, I've never seen a business where that does not have these kind of like 5 systems in their business. Much like the human body, right? The human body, we've got all these systems that work together. We have our skeletal system and our nervous system, our cardiovascular system, right? Same way, every business has something we call an acquisition system, which is how do you take a complete stranger and turn them into somebody that's sitting in your seat paying for an experience with your business, right? So restaurant comes to me and goes, hey, sales are lumpy. Thursday night's empty. I don't know why. Why does lead gen matter? Well, lead gen doesn't matter, but it's like, hey, let's actually walk through your acquisition system. And it starts with your traffic system. That's the first one. So I'd ask, okay, red, yellow, green. Let's think of like a traffic light. If you were to grade your traffic system, what would you grade it? And your traffic system has one job. It has to increase or capture attention from the people that you want, your ideal client. So if you have a winery, it's like, okay, who's your ideal client of that winery? How many of those people are there? And what are the things that you're doing every day or the things that are happening in your business, not to generate leads, not to generate sales, but literally just to capture the attention of those folks in your space. What are you doing? How well is that working? You know what most people say, Brady? Is they're like, oh, I don't know. I pay my PR company, right? Like, what do they say? Like that. I mean, unless I'm missing something, that's usually the case. Like, I don't know. And it's like, so you've abdicated. Okay. Travis, like,
no,
okay,
we go to events. We basically, we do things in the neighborhood. We go to larger events. We do some ads. We do social media. We have a website. We pay a lot for our website.
Yeah.
We had a PR team, but the PR teams are come and go.
Yeah.
So is that my traffic system?
That's your traffic. Yep. So that's your traffic system. So we might go, okay, hey, sounds like you're doing some stuff and you might be capturing some attention. So maybe that's a yellow. So green would be like, hey, it's working and we know it's working. Yellow is like, it could be improved. Red is like, it's non-existent or it's totally broken. So maybe it's a yellow. Maybe traffic system is a yellow. We're doing events. We pay some PR companies. It shifts over time. We get out into the community. We sponsor some of the local sports stuff. Okay, great. The next system is your lead gen system, which goes, okay, now we have someone's attention. How do we actually get them to raise their hand so that we can potentially start a conversation? And the lead gen system and the next one are probably the two areas that I see most hospitality and service businesses miss out because they're all focused on that traffic system, on the PR, on the events, on those things. So the lead gen system is how do we have a compelling reason for those people, now that we've got their attention, do we have a compelling reason for them to actually connect with us, to DM us on social, to make a reservation, to book a tasting, to follow us on whatever it might be, to get them to raise their hand, to fill out our contact form or an inquiry form to host their event at our venue, like whatever it might be. What's our lead gen system? And again, we would rate it red, yellow, green. So red is, I don't have one. We just have a website and we just wait for people to make reservations or to reach out to us. To me, that's a red. Yellow is like, okay, yeah, there's some things that we do when we do events. We do these giveaways and we have people, give us their social so that we can go follow them on social and carry on the conversation there or get their contact information or, whatever it might be from events. So it's like, okay, you're doing something, maybe it can be improved. Green is like, no, I know exactly how we're turning that attention into hand raisers and into conversations.
What about like if somebody is, hey, so we have a website and we get like, a couple hundred people that reach out to us every month and want us, fill out our contact form. And we like usually just add them to our newsletter. And then we have a social media manager and his job is to go in and reply to everybody. So he does that, like, I think like a couple hours a week. How's that? Is that a yellow? Is that a red? Is that a green?
it sounds to me like a yellow. So it's like you're doing some stuff, but do we know how it connects all the way through to getting somebody in the seat to pay us money for an experience? Which if the answer on that is no, it's probably a yellow.
When you say that, if we had a social media person and we had the forms online on our website, and we knew at the end of the month exactly how many of those people that engaged with us turned into a reservation, what would that be, like a green system? Because you
Yeah,
can
100%.
measure and track it. Okay.
Yeah, because the next system is the engagement system. So we start with traffic. So we have to capture attention, and we have to then get people to raise their hand. We have to give them a compelling reason to reach out, to raise their hand and go like, hey, I see you. The engagement system then is how we get them into conversation. Remember, the advice I would give myself is to get into more conversation, because conversion or sales happen in conversation. And so how do we, once we have someone's attention, once they've raised their hand, how do we actually literally get them into, whether it's in a DM, over the phone, in person, get them into some kind of conversation with our company, with someone on our team, with our brand somehow? Because once we do that, then our next system, our sales system, is really just a matter of like, okay, now we're making the invitation for someone to become a client or to make a reservation, or you name it, right? To buy product. So, and these things all stack together. So what I see more often than not is we feel like we should be doing something. Hey, I know I should be doing social, or I know I need to be doing PR, or I know I need this thing on my website, or I know I need to have an Instagram, but then we just have it and we're like doing stuff, but it's not part of a system. When you have a system, and I'm gonna get kind of nerdy for a second, if that's okay, the output of the one system becomes the input for the next system. It's the same exact thing in the kitchen, right? Like, what's the very first, like before the restaurant ever opens for the day, what's like the very first thing that happens in a kitchen every morning?
They have breakfast?
They have breakfast, but I mean, like the team, like they're doing prep, right? They have to like prep. They have to do prep. I mean, I don't imagine many kitchens out there that don't do some form of prep. And what even happens before the prep? Like the chef has to come up with a menu. So like the menu is the output of the chef's menu system. That becomes the input for the team that's going to do prep. And then the team does prep, and all of those ingredients and raw materials are the output of that prep system, become the input for the service team now that's going to put things together. And you have the whole line, and you've got your line cooks and your sous chefs and then your head chef. And then what comes out of the kitchen literally becomes the input for the next system, which is your front of house staff, right? So in the same exact way, like your business is no different from this. And this is why, as a photographer, I always looked at my business with the same, in the same way that I looked at my craft as an artist. I looked at my business the exact same way. And I would look at my restaurant or my winery, distillery in the same way of like, okay, what is if these are all the things that we have to do to produce product and experience, what is that for my actual marketing and sales? How am I capturing attention? And then how does that feed into where people are raising their hand to reach out? How does that then feed into me driving engagement? Because my guess is most of the people listening to this are actually doing way too many things and way too much. They could actually do a lot less and make more money.
Yeah, I think the idea of we put so much training and input into our individuals who learn how to make a cocktail, where they were trained to make cocktails, their history, the chef, the sous chef, the executive chef, the chef, chef de cuisine, like they're all expected to have so many skills and traits. Mm-hmm. And then we put them through practice and we watch them, right? Servers, the whole hospitality industry is based on your experience and skill set to get you the job. And then it's in-person proof of participation, right? Yeah. But if our training systems are weak on what we're giving our social media managers, our PR teams, and our website teams, and at the end of the day, it's like having 3 servers on the floor. hey, all that food went out. Where's the money? Like, is there any money? No. We'll just send you a nice report that says we had a good conversation with table 4, but there was six people.
You would never put up with that.
Where's the money? Like, don't worry about it. Like, it's
wild.
training.
Do you know?
It's that training though. It's like, for me, it's like that first piece of like, why don't we put that energy into our social media, into our website, people, like, and say, here's your job, show me your skill set. And part of your skill set is that you know how to service me as a client or service my table, and that you show me revenue return. I'm going to pay you X. And at the end of the month, I want you to prove some type of money back to me from your efforts. Now, right. It's very simple on a line cook. It's very simple to see this on a server or a bartender. But if your floor is crazy busy all night on a Thursday and your bar does half the revenue, guess what? Everybody's looking at those, like, what happened that night? Like, on when we do this much food sales on the floor, the bar should be X. And if the bar shows up short, but we're not doing that same kind of mentality on our front side, and that's kind of where growth maps is living.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like
Exactly.
You want to see that input and that training happen. So
we have the literal we've got the tech, because we have the CRM side. If you're not familiar with what a CRM is, it stands for Customer Relationship Manager. So it's a piece of software where you can see literally all those contacts that raise their hand, that, the leads. It shows your patrons and your customers. So we have the tech side of it, so the tech doesn't have to get in the way, and then the training and implementation side, so that what your team actually needs to do. So we know what your hosts and host staff need to do. We know what your back office needs to do every day to monitor the business. Because did you know it took so Dan Cathy of Chick-fil-A, I think they say it took him over 2 years just to get the entire company trained on saying "my pleasure." So when a client comes in, or a customer, in the drive-through in one of their stores, whatever, says thank you, the staff is trained to say "my pleasure." And I bring it back to that because I know we're talking revenue and experience, but this goes exactly to your point, Brady, where we are so focused on some of those things in terms of, okay, what's our typical percentage of revenue from the bar on a given night? And if it comes in low, typically we can point to reasons why. It's like, okay, the staff has gotten lax on, either we put out a really bad product, or the staff has gotten lax on making suggestions to our patrons, you name it. That same exact thing is true in the customer experience. And what Dan Cathy knew was, if he could create a connection and a conversation with his customers, that would by default turn into more revenue for the business. And it took him a long time to make that happen. And the reason why it happened is because he was relentless with it, of like, no, hey, here's the thing that we do every day when we're making our chicken sandwiches and our waffle fries and our shakes and our lemonade. But that has to carry over to in our interaction with the customer. So our caring that we put into the food has to go into this relationship, and probably even a little bit easier for him because he's doing it literally in person with their customers. And I think it often gets ignored by businesses when it's online, when it's in between visits, because we just assume, it's the whole premise of the show that goes to guests. The assumption is if they're not in my presence, then like, I don't need to pay attention to them or engage. But the opposite is actually true. If you can engage online in between visits, you're going to be wildly profitable and wildly more successful than everyone else who completely ignores that and is completely ghosting.
Yep. Well, my ghosted guest, Gabriel Ryan. It makes a lot of sense, like how you guys are trying to put this frame together to help people kind of see that you're a digital storefront, regardless if you're let's just say service-based industry, right? That I believe service-based begins with your decision to have a website, social media, and some type of traffic PR. That is a traffic system.
Yep.
And when you decide to do that, then you're missing the fourth horseman, which is, well, I know there's got to be contracts and vetting and everything from an artist. Who's my designer, my web designer? Oh, they're too expensive. This, that, and the other. Oh, who's the PR company? Who do they work for? What do they do? Like social media. Who's doing that? Like how good are they? What kind of results? Engagement. We're just forgetting that last horseman is the one piece. And if all of those things go into a CRM tool, then you own every single one of your contacts in between visits. You own them for the holiday season. You build trust with them. You show up with them when they're least expecting to hear from you. You have the ability to do so. And I think it sounds like that's what you guys have the ability to like help people find in their systems that might be missing a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we have like a super.
Is there like a sprint, or is there something that you guys do? Like when you say, "Hey, welcome to GrowthMaps. Here is your onboarding intake." What do you guys call the system? Like, how do you?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two parts to it. One is literally mapping the system. Again, the name of the company is GrowthMap for a reason. So much like if you were to hire an adventure company because you wanted to climb Everest, we need to come in and do a quick map of like, all right, your business model and your business. Let's look at those 5 different systems. Where are you getting traffic from? How are you getting people to raise their hand? How are you starting into conversation? The sales system, the nurture system, what's your content look like? So we literally like map it out. All right, what does your business need to look like when it's done in terms of if things were firing on all cylinders to capture attention and convert that attention into revenue? If we had every piece in place, nothing extra, nothing missing, what would that be? So that's step 1. And then step 2 is I run through a process called the Clarity Compass I created that helps us to kind of like traffic light those different areas so that we know what is the most important thing to work on right now. Like what's going to be the biggest needle mover, because doing the right thing in the wrong order can delay your results a very long time. And so often there's some low-hanging fruit where if we just solved one problem, and a lot of folks think sometimes it has to do with, we need more leads or we need more reservations, and we focus on that. But maybe there's something missing in that engagement system that would actually speed things up, or even in how we make the invitation to our clients that are already in the seats with us. So we map the system. That's step 1. Just like if you were to hire an adventure guide, we want to map the path. And then we want to run the Clarity Compass. And then we actually end up running that Clarity Compass every 6 to 8 weeks just to make sure we stay on track, because there's always going to be a bottleneck. There's always going to be some kind of problem that we need to solve in the business. And there's always going to be an opportunity that we can capitalize on. And that's typically shifting over time. It's not going to be the same. Hopefully it's not going to be the same 6 months from now from what it is right now, or 12 months or 2 years from now. If it is, that means you're stagnant, you're not growing, or even worse, like you don't have a strategy. You're just kind of relying on hope and referrals.
Yep. Well, I think, is there anything else today that you think is important to kind of like break in or break down as part of like your mission, or what you're, if you had the one person that you really wanted to help or target in on, if somebody was listening today, is there anything fun that you can give them to help them get to know Gabe a bit more? You got any fun magnet?
Yeah. So first off, just to get like kind of really clear on the mission, like what we're building with GrowthMap. The mission is to help 500 service-based businesses double and triple their revenue. We are about 10% of the way to that goal. We're currently sitting at 44 active clients. We've served well more than that. We've got hundreds of customers that we worked with over the years in different capacity, but 44 full-fledged clients that we're working with. Again, the goal is to get to 500. I wrote a book called Hooked to Booked. We can put that in the show notes. Highly recommend reading it, you get a little bit more of my story and kind of some of the nitty gritty. There's some things we didn't get into in this conversation, which maybe we will in other episodes, where in between Strike Point and me landing in Nashville, there's a 90-day time frame where I moved from Bend, Oregon to Las Vegas, Nevada, back to Bend to Nashville, which originally was not the plan, but there was some crazy stuff that went down that started that. Some of that's in the book. But more importantly, what's in the book is a 4-step system that you could take and install into your business right away. Like, yeah, I would love for you to come and join the climb and join us with GrowthMap and have us dive under the hood and help you in your business. And if that's you, would love to chat about what that looks like. Just find me on Instagram at Gabriel Ryan and we can chat. But if you just picked up the book, like there are some very practical strategies in that book that you can implement that I know have could make some significant impact on your business. And there's proof in the stories in the book to show that from the work that I've done with clients over the years. So I'd check out the book, and yeah, if you feel like you want to be one of those 500, we'd love to chat about what that looks like.
Sweet. Cool. I'm just thinking like, having you, do Ghost of Guests with me. And, I think this is a great opportunity to find and help some amazing people. Just to kind of tie up one of the conversations today, do you think that GrowthMap for photographers and going through that system would be a great step? Could you help double and triple and save somebody a bunch of time, and then they can redeposit back with their family? And how long would the transformation take, you think? If you can,
yeah.
Think you can help a photographer.
Yeah, I mean, if I had this, I'm grateful that I had what I had with eMyth, but if I had this in its place, we would have done 5x what we did with the photography business, because there are some elements that were really kind of like general in eMyth but I had to do a lot of the heavy lifting to kind of like translate that into a creative services business that I had. Whereas if I had GrowthMap back then and someone who was willing to plan the route with me, and then every 6 to 8 weeks, look at what the bottleneck was in my business, and then just like systematically compound growth, quarter after quarter. I mean, yeah, 100%. But yeah, I'm not going to force anyone to grow, but yeah, if I'd had it, it would have been phenomenal.
So if somebody if photographers are listening today, because I'm going to send this to a couple.
Yeah.
Photographers listening to this today, how long does the journey come, or how long does the journey take? If I were to come in and say, hey, I love what I do, but I'm just burned out. Like, how long is it until I start to see some results?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as with everything, it takes time, but we should see some quick wins within the first 30 to 60 days. If we don't, there's something wrong, like at a systemic level. So usually 30 to 60 days, we're focused on some quick wins. What's the low hanging fruit? We have ultimate clarity at that point because we've mapped the route. We know exactly what the bottleneck is. That alone can often be the difference maker. I mean, how often has just a conversation, whether it's been with a coach or in a mastermind, the clarity that you get coming away from an event or a weekend, 1 or 2 changes in the business or in a relationship can make all the difference. So within the first 30 to 60 days, we're absolutely going to get that. And then it depends on where folks, like how far along they're at in their journey. But we work together at minimum for a year with clients, because we found that's really, that's kind of a minimum viable time frame to get, significant impact. How fast you go, again, really depends on skill set you already have and where you're at in your journey. I've got some clients, one in the book who I talk about, who was a photographer. His name's Cole, and had an offer and had a lot of the elements already working well for him. Phenomenal product. Really was building a thriving community, just wasn't monetizing it in the way that he thought he could, and went from doing a couple $100,000 a year to we did $772,000 in a week, because we just made a couple of tweaks. So he saw results very quickly. But again, those results are not typical. That's because he had a lot already working for him. We just had to plug a couple of the leaks. And then for other clients, it's, you know, it's a little bit longer because it's like, oh, they're just getting started or everything is really disoriented, but we're going to, regardless, we're going to see wins month over month, quarter over quarter, cycle over cycle. So yeah, 30 to 60 day quick wins, work together at least a year. And then the goal is, you know, by the end of that first year, we become such a valuable growth partner for you that you never want to leave. And, you know, 1 + 1 = 10. We're better together. You're making more, working less time, doing what you love because you're partnered with us. So why would you ever leave in that kind of a relationship?
I feel it. Sweet, buddy. Well, I think that wraps up our show for today. I think we've done a great job of like walking through everything.
Love it.